Galileo Galilei is one of history's most iconic figures, often hailed as the father of modern science. His groundbreaking work in physics, mathematics, and astronomy laid the foundation for many of the principles that govern modern scientific thought. However, Galileo's story is not only one of triumph, but also of struggle, conflict, and personal sacrifice. Born during the height of the Renaissance, Galileo lived in a world where new ideas were challenging old traditions. His discoveries, particularly his support for the heliocentric model of the universe, brought him into direct conflict with the Catholic Church. This clash between scientific inquiry and religious doctrine defined much of his life and cemented his legacy as a symbol of intellectual freedom. Galileo's life is a testament to the power of observation and reason. His work demonstrated the importance of questioning established beliefs and seeking answers through experimentation. Despite the opposition he faced, his contributions continue to inspire scientists and thinkers worldwide. In this exploration of Galileo's life, we will delve into his early years, his revolutionary discoveries, and the trial that shaped his legacy. By examining his story, we gain insight into the challenges faced by pioneers who dare to challenge the status quo. Let us begin this journey through the life and legacy of Galileo Galilei. Early life and education. Galileo Galilei was born on February 15, 1564, in the city of Pisa, within the Grand Duchy of Tuscany. His father, Vincenzo Galilei, was a musician and music theorist known for his innovative ideas about sound and string tension. Vincenzo's critical approach to established theories and his emphasis on experimentation deeply influenced young Galileo, fostering an early interest in science and observation. As the eldest of 6 children, Galileo was expected to follow a stable career path. Initially, his parents intended for him to pursue medicine, a profession that promised financial security and social respectability. In 1581, at the age of 17, he enrolled at the University of Pisa to study medicine. However, his true passion lay elsewhere. During his time at the university, Galileo became captivated by mathematics. Inspired by the works of Euclid and Archimedes, he began to attend lectures on geometry and mechanics, neglecting his medical studies in favor of these subjects. This shift in focus marked the beginning of a lifelong dedication to uncovering the principles of the natural world. Galileo's curiosity extended beyond the classroom. He conducted his first experiments during this period, challenging the dominant Aristotelian view that heavier objects fall faster than lighter ones. These early experiments, although informal, laid the groundwork for his later revolutionary contributions to physics. Despite his academic promise, Galileo faced financial challenges that forced him to leave the University of Pisa without completing his degree. Undeterred, he continued his studies independently, deepening his understanding of mathematics and natural philosophy. His determination to pursue knowledge, even in the face of adversity, was a hallmark of his character. In 1589, Galileo was appointed to a position as a lecturer in mathematics at the University of Pisa. This role gave him the opportunity to teach and refine his ideas. It was during this time that he conducted his famous experiment on the Leaning Tower of Pisa, demonstrating that objects of different masses fall at the same rate when air resistance is negligible. Galileo's time at Pisa was short-lived, as his unorthodox methods and challenges to Aristotelian physics made him a controversial figure among his peers. In 1592, he accepted a more prestigious position at the University of Padua, where he would spend nearly 2 decades teaching and conducting research. This period proved to be one of the most productive in his career. At Padua, Galileo explored a wide range of topics, including mechanics, astronomy, and engineering. He designed innovative devices such as a military compass and an early thermometer, demonstrating his ability to apply theoretical principles to practical problems. These inventions not only advanced technology, but also showcased Galileo's ingenuity. Galileo's teaching style was as revolutionary as his ideas. He emphasized observation and experimentation, encouraging his students to question established knowledge and seek evidence for themselves. This approach inspired many of his pupils to pursue their own scientific endeavors, further spreading his influence. Throughout these years, Galileo maintained a deep interest in the heavens. He He began to question the Ptolemaic model of the universe, which placed Earth at the center, and developed an early appreciation for the heliocentric theory proposed by Copernicus. Although he had not yet made the observations that would confirm this model, his skepticism of the geocentric worldview was growing. By the time Galileo left Padua in 1610, he was a well-established figure in the scientific community. His innovative experiments, rigorous teaching methods, and willingness to challenge authority had earned him both admiration and criticism. The foundations of his later discoveries were firmly in place, and his journey toward greatness was just beginning. The telescope and astronomical breakthroughs. In 1609, Galileo learned about a new invention from the Netherlands, the telescope. Originally created for military and navigational purposes, the telescope was a relatively simple device that could magnify distant objects. Recognizing its potential for astronomical observation, Galileo quickly set about improving the design. He constructed a telescope capable of magnifying objects up to 20 times, far surpassing the capabilities of its Dutch predecessor. With this improved instrument, Galileo turned his gaze to the heavens. One of his first major discoveries was the surface of the moon. Contrary to the Aristotelian belief that celestial bodies were perfect and unchanging, Galileo observed craters, mountains, and valleys on the moon. He meticulously sketched these features, revealing that the moon was a dynamic, Earth-like world. In January 1610, Galileo directed his telescope toward Jupiter and made a groundbreaking discovery. He observed 4 bright points of light near the planet that appeared to change position nightly. These were the 4 largest moons of Jupiter, now known as Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Galileo's discovery was monumental because it provided clear evidence that not all celestial bodies orbited the Earth, directly challenging the geocentric model of the universe. Galileo's observations of Venus added further weight to the heliocentric theory proposed by Copernicus. He noted that Venus exhibited phases similar to those of the moon, which could only occur if Venus orbited the Sun. This observation was incompatible with the Ptolemaic model, but entirely consistent with the heliocentric view. Galileo also turned his telescope to the Milky Way, discovering that it was composed of countless individual stars. This revelation shattered the long-held belief that the Milky Way was a uniform, ethereal substance. Galileo's findings expanded humanity's understanding of the vastness and complexity of the universe. In March 1610, Galileo published his findings in Sidereus Nuncius, The Starry Messenger, a work that brought him widespread fame. The book detailed his telescopic discoveries and included detailed illustrations of the moon's surface and the positions of Jupiter's moons. It was a sensation across Europe, earning Galileo admiration and recognition from scholars, patrons, and the public. Galileo's fame earned him the patronage of the Medici family, one of the most powerful and influential families in Italy. He dedicated his discovery of Jupiter's moons to Cosimo II de' Medici, naming them the Medicean stars in honor of his new patrons. This strategic move secured Galileo a position as the chief mathematician and philosopher to the Grand Duke of Tuscany, providing him with financial stability and a platform for his work. However, Galileo's discoveries also attracted criticism. Many scholars and theologians were deeply troubled by the implications of his findings, which directly contradicted the geocentric worldview supported by the Catholic Church. While Galileo had not yet publicly declared his support for heliocentrism, his observations were seen as a challenge to the established order. Galileo continued to refine his telescopic observations, studying the rings of Saturn and the dark spots on the Sun. These sunspots, which he observed moving across the solar surface, provided further evidence that the heavens were not immutable. Galileo's work demonstrated that celestial bodies were subject to change and motion, just like the Earth. Despite his growing acclaim, Galileo faced increasing opposition from conservative scholars and religious authorities. Many viewed his findings as a threat to traditional knowledge and a challenge to the Church's authority. The tension between Galileo's scientific discoveries and the prevailing worldview was beginning to build. By the end of 1610, Galileo had firmly established himself as one of the leading astronomers of his time. His discoveries not only expanded the frontiers of human knowledge, but also set the stage for a dramatic conflict between science and faith. The telescope had opened a new window to the universe, and Galileo was determined to explore it, no matter the cost. The Church and the Geocentric model. For centuries, the Catholic Church had upheld the geocentric model of the universe, a framework deeply rooted in the works of Aristotle and Ptolemy. This model placed Earth at the center of creation, with the sun, moon, planets, and stars revolving around it in fixed, perfect orbits. It was more than just a scientific theory. It was a worldview that aligned with theological interpretations of Scripture and reinforced humanity's central role in God's design. The heliocentric model, first proposed by Nicholas Copernicus in the 16th century, challenged this long-held belief. Copernicus suggested that the sun, not Earth, was the center of the universe, with planets orbiting it in elliptical paths. While his ideas were mathematically elegant, they remained largely theoretical, as there was little observational evidence to support them. The Church initially tolerated the heliocentric model as a hypothetical framework, but Galileo's discoveries changed this dynamic. Galileo's observations through his telescope, particularly his discovery of Jupiter's moons and the phases of Venus, provided empirical evidence for the heliocentric model. These findings directly contradicted the Ptolemaic system and posed a challenge to the Church's authority. If the geocentric model was flawed, what else in the established order might be questioned? In 1616, the Church took a decisive stance against heliocentrism. The Roman Inquisition declared the Copernican theory false and contrary to Scripture and banned all works that promoted it. Copernicus's book, De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium, was placed on the index of forbidden books. Galileo, who had privately supported the heliocentric model, was summoned to Rome and warned not to teach or defend it publicly. The Church's opposition to heliocentrism was not solely based on scientific concerns. The Protestant Reformation had already challenged the Church's authority on theological matters, and heliocentrism was seen as another potential threat to its dominance. Accepting the heliocentric model required a reinterpretation of certain biblical passages, which many Church officials were unwilling to consider. Despite the Church's decree, Galileo continued to study and discuss heliocentrism privately. He believed that science and religion could coexist and argued that Scripture was not meant to be a scientific text. In his view, the Bible taught spiritual truths, while the natural world revealed physical truths through observation and reason. In his correspondence with influential Church figures, Galileo sought to reconcile heliocentrism with Catholic doctrine. He famously wrote that the Bible teaches us how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. However, his efforts to bridge the gap between science and religion were met with resistance. Many within the Church saw his ideas as a challenge to their authority rather than an opportunity for dialogue. The tension between Galileo and the Church grew as his discoveries gained wider recognition. Conservative scholars and theologians accused him of undermining traditional knowledge and sowing doubt among the faithful. Galileo's opponents used his findings to argue that science was a dangerous pursuit that could lead to heresy. Despite these challenges, Galileo remained steadfast in his pursuit of knowledge. He was confident that the evidence would ultimately vindicate the heliocentric model. However, he was also aware of the growing risks associated with his work. The Church's condemnation of heliocentrism had created an environment where questioning the geocentric worldview was seen as an act of defiance. By the early 1620s, Galileo's relationship with the Church had become increasingly strained. While he continued to enjoy the patronage of the Medici family and the support of some progressive Church officials, his critics were becoming more vocal. The stage was set for a confrontation that would define Galileo's legacy and the future of scientific inquiry. Dialogue concerning the two chief world systems. In 1623, Galileo found what seemed to be a promising ally in Pope Urban VIII, who had recently ascended to the papacy. Urban VIII was known for his interest in science and had previously expressed admiration for Galileo's work. Encouraged by this, Galileo sought to reopen the debate on the structure of the universe. His goal was to present the heliocentric model in a way that would be palatable to the Church, framing it as a theoretical discussion rather than a definitive assertion. Galileo began work on what would become his most famous and controversial book, Dialogue, concerning the two chief world systems. Published in 1632, the Dialogue was written as a conversation between three characters. Salviati, named after one of Galileo's friends, argued in favor of the heliocentric model. Simplicio, a defender of the geocentric view, was often portrayed as simplistic and unconvincing. The third character, Sagredo, served as a neutral observer who weighed the arguments of both sides. The dialogue was structured to compare the strengths and weaknesses of the two models, but it was clear that Galileo favored the heliocentric theory. Salviati's arguments were compelling and supported by evidence, while Simplicio's defenses of the geocentric view often seemed weak or outdated. This portrayal, though intended to highlight the superiority of the heliocentric model, also gave the impression that Galileo was mocking those who supported the Church's position. The publication of the Dialogue was a bold move. Galileo had obtained permission from the Church to publish the work, but it quickly became clear that many Church officials were unhappy with its content. Some believed that Simplicio's character was a veiled critique of Pope Urban VIII, who had personally supported the geocentric model in earlier discussions with Galileo. Whether or not this was intentional, the perception that Galileo had insulted the Pope added fuel to the controversy. The Dialogue was an instant success, widely read and discussed across Europe. Its clear, accessible style and compelling arguments made it a landmark work in the history of science. However, its popularity also attracted the attention of the Roman Inquisition, which launched an investigation into its content and the circumstances of its publication. Galileo defended the Dialogue as an impartial discussion rather than an outright endorsement of heliocentrism. He argued that his intention was to present both sides of the debate and allow readers to draw their own conclusions. However, the Inquisition was not convinced. To them, the Dialogue was a direct challenge to the Church's authority and a violation of the 1616 decree forbidding the promotion of heliocentrism. In 1633, Galileo was summoned to Rome to stand trial for heresy. The Dialogue became the centerpiece of the prosecution's case against him, and the trial marked the beginning of Galileo's final confrontation with the Church. Despite his attempts to defend his work, the Inquisition viewed the Dialogue as a threat to the established order. The publication of the Dialogue was a turning point in Galileo's life. While it solidified his reputation as one of the greatest scientific minds of his time, it also brought him into direct conflict with the most powerful institution of his era. The book's success highlighted the growing tension between scientific inquiry and religious authority, a conflict that would shape the future of both fields. Galileo's willingness to publish the Dialogue despite the risks demonstrated his unwavering commitment to the pursuit of truth. He believed that the evidence for the heliocentric model was too compelling to ignore, and that science had a duty to challenge outdated ideas. However, the consequences of this decision would be severe, leading to one of the most infamous trials in the history of science. Galileo's trial and condemnation. In 1633, Galileo Galilei stood before the Roman Inquisition in what would become one of the most infamous trials in the history of science. Accused of heresy for advocating the heliocentric model, Galileo faced a powerful institution determined to defend its authority. This trial was the culmination of decades of tension between Galileo's scientific discoveries and the doctrines of the Catholic Church. The primary evidence against Galileo was his book, Dialogue concerning the two chief world systems. The Inquisition argued that the Dialogue explicitly violated the Church's 1616 decree, which had forbidden the promotion of heliocentrism. Despite obtaining initial approval to publish the work, Galileo was accused of using the Dialogue to covertly support Copernican ideas. Galileo's defense was centered on the claim that his book did not definitively endorse heliocentrism, but merely presented it as a theoretical model for discussion. He argued that the Dialogue was intended to explore both the geocentric and heliocentric systems without taking a firm stance. However, the tone and structure of the dialogue made it clear that Galileo favored the heliocentric view, and the Inquisition was not convinced by his explanation. Throughout the trial, Galileo faced intense questioning and the threat of severe punishment, including torture. The Inquisition sought to make an example of him, demonstrating the consequences of challenging the Church's authority. Under immense pressure, Galileo recanted his support for the heliocentric model, publicly declaring that he no longer believed in the motion of the Earth around the Sun. According to popular legend, as Galileo rose from his knees after his recantation, he muttered the phrase, "E pur si muove," and yet it moves, a defiant affirmation of his belief in the Earth's motion. While there is no historical evidence to support this anecdote, it has become a powerful symbol of Galileo's unyielding commitment to scientific truth. The Inquisition found Galileo guilty of vehement suspicion of heresy and sentenced him to house arrest for the remainder of his life. His dialogue was banned, and all of his works supporting heliocentrism were prohibited. The trial marked a turning point in Galileo's life, effectively ending his public career and confining him to isolation. The condemnation of Galileo was not just a personal tragedy, it also represented a broader conflict between science and authority. By silencing Galileo, the Church sought to suppress the growing movement of scientific inquiry that questioned traditional beliefs. However, this attempt to stifle progress ultimately failed, as Galileo's ideas continued to spread and inspire others. Galileo's trial remains a poignant reminder of the challenges faced by those who dare to question established norms. Despite his recantation, his discoveries could not be undone. The evidence he had provided for the heliocentric model was too compelling to ignore, and his work laid the foundation for future generations of scientists. The trial of Galileo is often seen as a clash between reason and dogma, a moment when the pursuit of knowledge collided with the structures of power. While Galileo's condemnation was a personal defeat, it also highlighted the resilience of truth in the face of opposition. His ideas would ultimately prevail, reshaping humanity's understanding of the cosmos. Confined to his home but undeterred in spirit, Galileo entered the final chapter of his life. His work was far from over, and even under house arrest, he continued to push the boundaries of knowledge, leaving a legacy that would endure for centuries. Life under house arrest. After his trial in 1633, Galileo Galilei was sentenced to house arrest, marking the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Confined to his villa in Arcetri near Florence, he was prohibited from teaching, publishing, or defending his scientific ideas. Despite these restrictions, Galileo's intellectual curiosity and resilience remained undiminished. Over the next 9 years, he continued to make significant contributions to science, demonstrating his unyielding commitment to the pursuit of knowledge. Galileo's living conditions during his house arrest were modest but not unbearable. He was allowed visitors, including students, friends, and colleagues who sought his guidance and shared his passion for science. His villa became a quiet hub of intellectual activity, where ideas were exchanged and progress continued in defiance of the Church's attempts to silence him. One of Galileo's most remarkable achievements during this period was the publication of discourses and mathematical demonstrations relating to 2 new sciences. This work, smuggled out of Italy and printed in the Netherlands in 1638, summarized decades of Galileo's research on motion and mechanics. It introduced foundational concepts such as the principle of inertia, the parabolic trajectory of projectiles, and the relationship between time and distance in uniformly accelerated motion. The 2 new sciences is widely regarded as a cornerstone of modern physics. In it, Galileo laid the groundwork for principles that would later be formalized by Isaac Newton in his laws of motion. The book also included Galileo's studies on the strength of materials, providing valuable insights into engineering and material science. In addition to his scientific work, Galileo explored the design of practical devices. He developed ideas for efficient machines, including pumps and mechanisms for raising water. His ability to combine theoretical principles with practical applications demonstrated the versatility of his genius and ensured that his contributions extended beyond academia. Galileo's intellectual endeavors were not without challenges. By 1638, he had gone completely blind, likely due to years of observing the sun through his telescope without adequate protection. This disability did not deter him, however, as he continued to dictate his thoughts and ideas to his students and assistants. His determination to work despite his physical limitations was a testament to his indomitable spirit. Throughout his house arrest, Galileo maintained correspondence with scientists across Europe. Letters were his primary means of communication, allowing him to exchange ideas and stay informed about developments in the scientific community. These exchanges ensured that Galileo's influence extended far beyond the walls of his villa, shaping the work of future generations. Although Galileo's confinement limited his public role, his ideas continued to gain traction. His work inspired a growing movement of scientists who were willing to challenge traditional views and seek evidence-based answers. The seeds of the scientific revolution had been sown, and Galileo's contributions were at its heart. The final years of Galileo's life were marked by a mixture of frustration and fulfillment. While he lamented the restrictions placed on him, he took pride in the knowledge that his discoveries would outlive him. He expressed hope that future generations would embrace the truths he had uncovered and continue the work he had begun. On January 8, 1642, Galileo passed away at the age of 77. He left behind a legacy that would transform the world's understanding of the cosmos and the natural laws that govern it. Even in confinement, Galileo had demonstrated the power of resilience and the enduring importance of intellectual freedom. Galileo's house arrest was not the end of his influence, but rather a chapter in a life defined by the relentless pursuit of truth. His contributions during this period solidified his place in history as one of the greatest minds of all time, proving that even under the most trying circumstances, the spirit of inquiry cannot be extinguished. Posthumous recognition and legacy. Galileo Galilei passed away on January 8, 1642, under house arrest in his villa in Arcetri. At the time of his death, his name remained controversial, overshadowed by the Church's condemnation and the lingering ban on his works. However, Galileo's contributions to science and humanity's understanding of the universe had already begun to ripple through the intellectual landscape, influencing a new generation of thinkers. For more than a century, Galileo's name and works remained entangled in controversy. The Catholic Church maintained its opposition to heliocentrism, and Galileo's books, including dialogue concerning the two chief world systems, were banned. Nevertheless, his ideas continued to circulate among scientists and scholars who recognized their transformative potential. In 1758, the Church lifted its prohibition on heliocentric works, marking a gradual shift in its stance toward Galileo and his contributions. By the 19th century, Galileo had become a celebrated figure in the history of science, widely recognized as one of the greatest minds of all time. His work laid the foundation for modern physics, astronomy, and the scientific method, influencing luminaries such as Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. Galileo's legacy extends far beyond his scientific discoveries. He is remembered as a symbol of intellectual courage and the resilience of truth in the face of opposition. His willingness to challenge established beliefs and seek evidence-based answers set a standard for scientific inquiry that endures to this day. Galileo's life and work exemplify the transformative power of questioning and the importance of following the evidence, no matter where it leads. In 1992, Pope John Paul II formally acknowledged the Church's error in condemning Galileo. This act of reconciliation highlighted the evolving relationship between science and faith, emphasizing the need for dialogue and mutual respect. The Pope praised Galileo's contributions and recognized him as a pioneer of modern science, calling for a renewed commitment to the pursuit of knowledge. Today, Galileo is celebrated not only as a scientist, but also as a philosopher and innovator who reshaped humanity's understanding of the cosmos. His discoveries, ranging from the moons of Jupiter to the principles of motion, continue to inspire scientists and thinkers worldwide. Galileo's work remains a testament to the power of observation, experimentation, and critical thinking. Galileo's life also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of suppressing inquiry and the importance of intellectual freedom. His struggles remind us of the challenges faced by those who dare to challenge authority and push the boundaries of knowledge. Despite the obstacles he encountered, Galileo's ideas triumphed, proving that truth once discovered cannot be silenced. The story of Galileo Galilei is one of perseverance, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of understanding. His legacy endures as a beacon of inspiration for those who seek to uncover the mysteries of the universe and expand the horizons of human knowledge. Galileo's name remains synonymous with the spirit of discovery and the courage to question the unknown. If you've enjoyed this journey through the life and legacy of Galileo Galilei, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more explorations of history's greatest minds and moments. Thank you for joining us, and let's continue the quest for knowledge together.